Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Hero Movie Podcast, your greatest source for superhero movie discussion in the multiverse. I am your host, Adam Porters, and I'm joined by Cracker Factory worker extraordinaire, Sweet Sean Kovacs from the internet.
I'm a big wheel.
And the internet knows him best as Anime Dad, but you can call him Bruce Leslie.
I'm a prickly pear, and that redhead kid should have won all the awards.
Oh,
I knew you loved that kid the second I saw him on screen. I was like, no, I know Bruce's favorite moment.
Yeah, I saw him and I said, boy, the three of us love that kid.
We will address that kid momentarily, no doubt. We have a good episode this week, and it's actually brought to you by the people who support this show over at patreon.com/HMP. Those swamp lovers get the pre-show, post-show Dinger Zone, and of course, voting on the movies that we watch each month. And this month, the votes were tallied, and they have decided that this month we will be reviewing The Return of Swamp Thing from 1989. So we'll check that out momentarily. And if you would like to get a vote on what we watch, pre-show, post-show, Dinger Zone, all that kind of good stuff, and an HMP nickname, head on over to patreon.com/HMP and join today at whatever rate makes sense to you. We really appreciate that, all of you supporters, week after week. And one of those supporters, actually, we're going to mention him at the end of the show because you guys discussed something on the chat and I forgot to tell you about it, but we're going to change it up at the end of the show. Don't worry. I just like to keep you on your toes. So let's get into it. Here is the trailer for The Return of Swamp Thing.
The big green guy is back.
They call me Swamp Thing.
You're a plant, aren't you?
He's come back to settle the score.
Find him and bring him in.
He's got a grudge, cause they turned him to slud.
I believe this is yours. What?
The Return of Swamp Thing. Starring Louis Jourdain.
What did you do? Sell your soul to the devil?
Let's just say he has a lease with an option to buy.
Heather Locklear.
She can get in my things anytime she wants to.
Why can't men be more like plants? I mean, you can stroke a plant and it doesn't get the wrong idea.
And Swamp Thing.
But I can't give you the kind of love you want.
Why not?
I'm a plant.
That's okay. I'm a vegetarian.
The Return of Swamp Thing. He's turning over a new leaf for love.
Alrighty, that was the trailer for The Return of Swamp Thing. As always, you know the rules. Each time he mentions Alan Moore, you take a drink. Good luck and Godspeed. Bruce, what do you got for us this week?
Abigail Arcane, the woman who would marry that heap of sentient pond scum we all love, Swamp Thing. She first appeared in Swamp Thing number 3 in 1973 and was created by the Swamp Thing creators, Len Wein and Bernie Wrightson. You may have been able to infer this from Heather Locklear's performance, but Abigail was born in Transylvania, a region that is famous for having a college in Kentucky named after it. And back in the old country, Abby's evil uncle, not her stepfather, Anton Arcane, has her mother framed for witchcraft, which results in her fiery execution. As a teenager, Abby discovered she had a supernatural empathic ability, and then her father stepped on a landmine, and next thing you know, her evil uncle is her custodial guardian. Anton wants to teach Abby how to be a witch, and when she refuses, mean old Uncle Anton kicks her out of the castle. Being an overall good person, Abby becomes a nurse and works in a village children's clinic, but things get crazy when she meets American agent Matt Cable. They go on an adventure that results in Abby meeting Swamp Thing, Castle Arcane being destroyed, and ultimately Abby deciding she wants to move to America, probably because she heard about that college in Kentucky. On the way to America, Abby has a layover in Scotland, which she uses to fight a werewolf. Thankfully, Swamp Thing's stowed away on the plane, and he helps dispose of the lycanthrope. Somehow, Swamp Thing just keeps showing up by coincidence everywhere Abby goes. He shows up in Vermont, and then Gotham City, and then Florida. If I didn't know better, I'd say was stalking her. I mean, I don't think Vermont has any swamps, and one of those places has a collection of the most dangerously insane lunatics on Earth, and the other is Gotham City. Oh, by the way, one of the towns Abby goes to in Florida is called Gatorburg. I'm not making that up. Matt and Abby get married and settle down in the lovely bayou town of Houma, Louisiana, because there's no way that Swamp Thing guy could possibly find him there, right? Well, Matt Cable develops a drinking problem and Abby develops a swamp problem, as in she falls in love with the swamp. She also becomes really good friends with Swamp Thing and assures her husband, in the immortal words of Biz Marquis, he's just a friend. Abby finds a way out of her marriage when she discovers her husband is actually a zombie possessed by the spirit of her evil uncle, Anton Arcane. Oh boy, those crazy Louisiana marriages. When she tries to leave her uncle/husband, he magically murders her, but Swamp Thing gets a little help from the Phantom Stranger and journeys into the afterlife to retrieve Abby's soul, resurrecting her. Abby decides to marry Swamp Thing, and he feeds her a hallucinogenic tuber to seal the deal. A honeymoon straight from the mind of Alan Moore. So, Adam, do you have a really short list this week?
No. In fact, I have quite the opposite.
Let's hear it.
Because if this comic connection wasn't enough, I'm going to sell everybody right now on Return of the Swamp Thing, because let me tell you, thanks to our people over at Patreon, because this movie has everything. The director of Chopping Mall, more fog than the fog, nonstop bubbling liquids, peeing in the woods, Elephant Man, zombie Sonny Bono, a human cockroach. We have mutant execution, Betty Ford humor, country ass police, Dorian Gray, an angry fat ginger kid who knows a lot about astrology, apparently. MTV and nudie mags, door humor, now with 67% more post-dub audio. Swamp Monster playground fight, the spirit of Ricardo Montalban, insurance jokes, swamp creatures on fire, pirate henchmen, helicopters, four-wheelers, jet skis, fan boats, hillbillies or the equivalent there too, screaming things like, I hate California, and this guy's coleslaw. We've also got Heather Locklear doing the Lord's work with lines like, you're just a plant, aren't you? We got flashbacks to the first movie, light jogging, orange jumpsuit sales. We have circle wipes, blind wipes, clock wipes, page wipes, adults in pajamas, high-waisted white pants, regenerating glowing swamp slime, green bathwater, gratuitous candlelight, gratuitous parabellum e capario in D minor, multiple crotch kickings, multiple falling down steps, more missed gunshots rounds in an episode of G.I. Joe, implied swamp creature horizontal mambo, and we also learned that as long as you're closing your eyes, it doesn't matter who you bump uglies with, you can just imagine whatever you want. Also, lest we forget about the time when we learn about the inner politics of National Magazine publication, photograph submissions, and payments from two children. Villains eating breakfast, a yes man parrot, a science lab that looks like it'd be home on Nickelodeon, hot hostess talk, lens cap humor, cleavage galore, eyebrow acting, a Jaws scar scene, knock knock jokes, Swamp Thing takes an elevator, Swamp Thing throws a grenade, Swamp Thing drives a Jeep. And Swamp Thing also bashes dudes with a baseball bat. We've got a Brainiac Sinestro combo looking guy that crashes into every glass object that an eye can see. Crotch grenades, animated lightning, exploding cars, exploding trucks, exploding houses, swamp magic, and feet leaves. This movie has everything. And I don't know how, they made the best decision ever, because I'll tip my cart early. I enjoy this movie.
I liked it too, man. I can swear that I've seen this movie before. I know I had to have seen it around the time that it came out on VHS a couple of times, but watching it, it was as if I'd never seen it before. I remember nothing about it.
This is by far Jim Wynorski's best movie. I mean, it's not even close.
Well,
oh man. I like Chopping Mall.
Chopping Mall is fine, but I mean, come on. This is his best movie. Are
you only comparing it to Jim Wynorski movies, or are you including his pseudonyms? Because I have a list of his pseudonyms. If anybody's
there's a lot of soft core stuff that he shot as well as all of these movies.
He's used names like H.R. Blueberry and Tom Papadopoulos.
That's the green adult video shooter.
Actual movies he's made are Cleavage Field, Paraknockers Activity, The Bear Winch Project, The Witches of Brestwick, House on Hooter Hill, and The Hills Have Thighs. And I went down a little bit of a weird rabbit hole on The Hills Have Thighs, because apparently a politician from South Carolina named Bubba Comer, I think is his name, also made a movie called The Hills Have Thighs, and he sued HBO over it when they showed the wrong version of it or something like that.
I like that. I don't. That sounds like a great mythical legend or anything, but I'll buy it for $1.
I mean, the lawsuit's documented. I didn't make that up.
Sean, big Swamp Thing guy, I would imagine, right? From all the.
You are dead on. Actually, when he's written correctly, I like Swamp Thing. The problem is that, he's been around for 50 years now, and there's basically 3 writers that I can name who I like when they write for him. But this movie, I mean, aside from the character in the comic books, these 2 Swamp Thing movies, they're fine. Like, I don't dislike them. I like this is my favorite Swamp Thing movie. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
And there's something far more fun about this, where they kind of know, look, we don't have the budget to do something huge, so we're going to have fun doing it. And when you lean into it a little bit, like they are, like if they kind of hit like that right note, because if they would have gone too far, then you have MODOK, where nothing has stakes and no one cares. And I mean, they're almost there. They're almost at the line with this movie, but they don't go over it. And so I found myself watching this a lot more intently than I thought that I would. And, I mean, Heather
Locklear?
Heather Locklear, like I get that she was a very pretty lady from the 80s. Like, I know that everybody thought she was the sexiest lady ever in the 80s. She's not my type of lady. Yeah. But I can totally see, like, oh yeah, she's gorgeous, that lady. But like, it's not something where I'm like hamina every time she's on screen. And they kind of portray her like that in this movie, where every single person has something to say about how hot she is, even her uncle.
It does feel like that kind of like, hey, we know who this lady is, because this is like, TJ Hooker had been on the air, which it gets a reference in this thing. I like that TJ whatever show or something like that. So this was kind of like a height of her stuff and everything. And the thing I was surprised about with her in this movie is it really feels like she is down to play ball.
Yeah,
she does.
She's in for it. She knows what she's in.
She looks like she's having a lot of fun doing this, and it feels like everybody realizes we know we're kind of making this stupid, corny film and everything, but we're leaning into it when we can, and it kind of shows. It feels like everybody's having fun.
Is this movie rated R?
Oh, that's a very good question. And maybe, I don't know.
I don't think it is.
I remember as a kid, before I was able to watch it, like, I think part of why I wanted to watch it is for some reason I thought it was like Porky's level salacious, which it's not.
That was, so you did see a little bit of nudity in the first Swamp Thing when that kind of came out, like maybe on HBO or something. That one. Yeah. This one is PG-13. So okay, that's at least what IMDb has its rating at. So I'll take it. I
remember like thinking that this was something you couldn't let your parents know you watched.
No, if your parents watched you watch this, they'd be like, that sounds about right. Because this feels like the Swamp Thing television show.
Yeah, it feels a lot like that.
If anybody remembers that, like I remember, I think because that was my first real.
And not the one that was on the DC Direct thing.
No.
The old one on USA.
Yeah, exactly. That's where I kind of got my first real introduction to Swamp Thing, and then back to the first movie. And this is the first time that I've watched this one because it's called Return of Swamp Thing, and Heather Locklear's in it. It didn't call out to me, but I don't know why. But I am really happy that the patrons picked this one because. It was a boatload of fun. It seems like they went through with a very kind of loosey-goosey-esque sort of script and everything. Shot as bad. Oh, I read this. They had 30 days to shoot this. Wynorski did it in 26.
I also heard that what's his name? The old guy that played Louis Jourdan.
Mm-hmm.
I also heard that he refused to talk to Wynorski on set. Like he hated Wynorski for whatever reason.
Well, the reason is because they had an altercation where Miss Poinsettia, he wanted that the director wanted him to call her points. And he's like, I'm not doing that.
But come on, it's like boobs, huh?
Well, that's exactly what he's referring to.
Yeah.
And
So
and
bad.
Jourdan wouldn't do it. And then so Wynorski said, aren't you in a movie called Octopussy and you have a problem with points?
You son of a.
I mean, just the whole James Bond genre. They always give those ladies names like that, you know?
And so because of
Christmas
that,
Jones.
that's the anger. That's where it comes from. And that's why he barely spoke to him on set.
And that's one of those stories. I think Jourdan was just looking for a reason not to talk to this guy.
Well, he's probably, yeah. I mean, you know, he'd been acting for 50 years at this point, and now he's in Return of Swamp Thing. I'm sure he was not a absolute joy to have around set.
And he didn't even get to be Swamp Thing.
Walking around looking like Mr. Furley. I love it.
Robert Redford is Swamp Thing.
That would have been great. Is it Dick Durock? What's the name of the guy who's in the suit?
Yeah.
Dick Durock.
I feel bad for him. Is he like really ugly or something? Like they brought in a body double for when he got to be human. They wouldn't even let him be human himself.
Well, he's probably not, you know, cut to hell and awesome looking. You know, he's probably just like a regular gigantic dude. And so
They could let him keep his shirt on.
but they don't want him to have his shirt on. They want some guy with a super cut back and arms that go for days. Like that's what they wanted.
Oh man.
Or what Lockley.
He's there for what? The most uncomfortable 30 seconds of the movie?
Yes. So I got to tell you guys something, because I thought that I had like unearthed something where I was like, oh, we are going to make a meal out of this one. Because while I was doing the research for Stallone Connection this week, I came across a PA who worked on the movie whose name is Kathleen Kennedy.
Oh.
And so
that would have been great.
So I click on it and I was like, here we go. Here we go. Different Kathleen Kennedy. So
got a number 2
like,
by her
man,
name.
I had like all of these like grandiose things in my head. It's like I've never heard anyone talk about this, that she got her start on Return to Swamp Thing.
Yeah, Kathleen Kennedy's sitting back here and be like, you know, my work goes back to the late 70s, right?
Right, I know. But I hadn't put the math together yet because it was so, you know, it's just such a quick
You
thing.
see it and it's like, oh no, what? Say again?
Yeah. I can't believe it. I found something.
Here comes Oh, crap.
Well, Peter David did get to write the novelization.
Yowza. Oh, you know, that first swamp monster that we see at the beginning of the movie, don't you think that swamp monster looks an awful lot like Zat?
Who's that?
Zat.
Or this is third base.
Zat is
Quick,
this
like,
movie.
felt like
That is a movie from like a quote horror movie end quote from the 60s. It was done on the cheap, and it's a guy, the scientist who turns himself into a catfish man.
Sounds great.
There is a scene in particular where he's tearing the hell out of a drugstore that might be the funniest unintentionally funny 5 minutes you've ever seen.
I'm gonna have to look this one up. I might enjoy that.
Oh, it's so funny.
I'll tell you the first thought I had when we see that first that first monster come out of the swamp. My first thought was, man, they really blew it on Swamp Thing's costume in this movie.
it did look like, because that's your first inclination that it's Swamp Thing.
Yeah.
And they're like, this is
It's
terrible.
like he looks a little more like Man Thing than Swamp Thing.
That's precisely what I was going to say. That's a Man Thing look as opposed to a Swamp Thing look. I wonder if that was intentional at all.
Yeah, of course it was. Everything about this movie is intentional. Like when you look around and see, like, is this movie supposed to be funny? Like yes.
Yeah, it clearly
obviously.
is.
Look at the promotional.
I like how this movie was supposed to be funny. The first movie was supposed to be scary, and neither one of them quite accomplished it.
It's true.
Together they work.
It is true. And, you know, I was thinking about it while watching it yesterday, is that this movie is closer to Doll Man than it is to Toxic Avenger, but they clearly were trying to go for like a Toxic Avenger flavor to it.
Yeah.
It's just not nearly as horribly offensive as Toxic Avenger is.
The budget's probably twice as much, and that's not saying much for this
And
movie's budget.
Made less money than Toxic Avenger, sadly. But this movie's experience is kind of the experience I was hoping to have with Toxic Avenger. Like, I'll show my cards. I prefer this movie to Toxic Avenger.
No, I remember you not being a big fan. But it was one of those surprising things where I was like, oh, this movie is like right off the bat, you know that it's what they're going for. And what do you think they spent more money on, the CCR song or Swamp Thing makeup?
Probably a CCR song, man.
Yeah.
That's
'Cause
like
the
that is
Swamp
right
Thing-
up Front Street, right? That's their opening song and everything over credits. So they're like, that's their centerpiece. It was clearly in the trailer.
And I really feel like the Swamp Thing suit is at most like 2 pieces, and it probably was left over from the first movie. Like, I don't feel like they really upped their game on that Swamp Thing effect at all.
I honestly, I like the Swamp Thing suit enough. Like, it's not perfect by any means, but like
And
for what
I'm
they
a
had,
rubber suit fan, so I'm into it, but I don't think it looks all that expensive.
You know
it
what it
does-
looks like to me? It looks like the difference between Freddy Krueger in the first Nightmare on Elm Street and everyone after that, where that first Freddy Krueger is disgusting looking. But anything after that, you can tell that it's just applique makeup that they have in pieces.
Yeah.
And that's what this Swamp Thing looks like versus the Swamp Thing from the first one,
Oh, really?
in my opinion.
Yeah, I haven't seen that first one in a while, so my memory's not real sharp on it, but I thought it looked about the same.
Well, is the last time you saw it when we saw it?
I mean, can you picture a scenario where I'm watching it since then?
Yes.
But yes, the last time I saw it was when we saw it.
that's what
I'll
he
be
said.
honest with you. Yes, I can. I can see that scenario. Yes.
I can see him Bruce getting his wife sit down. Hey, we're watching that first Swamp Thing tonight. Date night over here at the house.
How do you
watching
feel
Swamp
about
Thing.
bar boobies? We'll watch the European cut.
Which one?
You
do?
know that Tuesday is Alan Moore movie night.
Don't give the man ideas. He's coming back with. Hey, listen, I had a really good idea about a movie night for the family. No.
All Swamp Thing all the time.
All right, let's talk about the kids. Bruce's clearly
Yes.
favorite part of this entire thing. I don't know who this little kid is, but he's just fantastic. Both of the kids are really great. But the little redhead kid is just like, he is delivering lines like kids delivered lines in the 80s, but he's doing like a great job at it. Like, you can tell he's gone
He's a
through
natural.
he's got that thing. That's what I would imagine like a 7-year-old Bruce Leslie would be like on a set.
Oh, I wish, man. That kid was awesome. I was nowhere near that outgoing.
I could not aspire to the the heights of this child.
And this was 89, right? So this is like the last hurrah for the 80s when you could still consider it funny that like 10-year-olds want to look at nudie mags. Like you can't really make that joke now.
No, it's a little bit risque for today's modern audience.
And the chubby redheaded kid has some great one-liners about Miss February and stuff like that. I mean, that kid is a natural talent. How was he not all over movies from like 1989 to 1991?
Well, he's still working. I mean, he's been
Oh, is
working
he?
this. Yeah, he's been working this whole time, man.
I have a filmography to dive into.
It's not what you think.
Somebody's like, I like
uh,
Sam Peckinpah movies. Bruce is like, I like that kid from Swamp Thing.
Well,
'Cause-
the kids are the best part of both Swamp Thing and Return of Swamp Thing because they had that great kid in the glasses in the first one.
The kid that you like in this one, the fat redhead kid, he's in Swamp Thing.
I prefer Rubenesque.
Okay, all right. So that disgusting fat kid who doesn't deserve to live.
Oh, geez.
He's in Return of Swamp Thing in '89. Then he's in I'll Fly Away in '91. Then he's not in movies for almost 10 years, and then he comes back for Road Trip,
Yeah, I've seen that.
I like Road Trip.
the Tom Green movie.
Yeah.
And then he is in every B movie from that point forward. Like
That kid is Breckenmeyer.
That little boy's name.
both kids in this movie are still working.
Really?
Yes, because the African American kid is also working still, and like to the point where like he's got headshots and he's got a pretty good filmography. Quite honestly, he's on The Shield, he's in Glory, he's in a lot of stuff.
His like obviously isn't kind of the bigger, showier kind of part than this kid kind of does it. But like he's clearly good too. They're delivering lines back and forth to the point where it doesn't feel like they had to just coach them through every single thing. It's a little hammy.
It's hard
it
to
works.
appreciate a really good work of art when it's hanging next to a Rembrandt. I mean, he's got to share the stage with the redheaded guy. Sometimes the star shines so bright you just can't see anything else around it.
And And there is I joked about it, but there's so much ADR in this movie. They put in just tons and tons of jokes and stuff afterwards. So again, they clearly knew what they were doing.
Tons and tons of what they thought were jokes.
Well,
Yes.
I put jokes
Yes.
in. I put jokes in quotes. But they're going through and they're giving great ADR performances as well, which sometimes ADR performances can just be absolutely awful. When I saw that new Saw movie, Chris Rock's voiceover stuff, his little VO things afterward, just awful, really, really bad. So it's nice to see that even in the 80s, they knew how to do things correctly sometimes.
Now, other than the kids, we'll take the kids out of consideration here. What was the best parts of this movie, or anything that's funny or worth commenting on? Because I could talk all day about the redheaded kid, but what are some of the other things that you thought are worth mentioning?
I will tell you, the most joy I got out of this movie was seeing Sarah Douglas working, because I hadn't seen her. The only other thing I can remember her ever being in is she's in Superman 2. She's one of the villains in Superman 2. And so to see her in this movie, I was like, holy crap. I guess she just works a lot, that lady. At least in the 80s she did.
Yeah.
Who is she in this movie?
She's the assistant to...
Okay, Miss Poinsettia or what?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
Cool. I didn't realize that's who that was.
Yeah. And so seeing her, I was like, oh man, that's so great. And she, she has a pretty extensive career in the 80s. She's in V, she's in Conan, she's in the Superman movies. And so I had she was gone from my mind. So when she shows up in this, it was like, oh man, that's so great that she was working. And now, she does all of the WB stuff, because, she's going to show up in Supergirl and things like that.
Oh, you mean the CW stuff? Okay.
I'm sorry. Yes. CW.
I thought you might meant she was actually working with Warner Brothers on stuff.
No, but she's in the CW stuff.
Now, something I really enjoyed, and this is also because this is kind of a time capsule, but they show the minions, the evil minions, going all through the swamp trying to find Swamp Thing, and they're on these 4-wheelers, and I guess they're supposed to look like intimidating evil legions of armies, but they can't afford nice 4-wheelers. I live in a rural area where I know that 4-wheelers do come in adult sizes, but they're riding the ones that you'd see a 9-year-old on. And maybe in 1989, that's as big as they got. I don't remember that well from back then, but it seemed like I remember riding 4-wheelers in the 80s that were bigger than what these guys are on. Or maybe these guys are all 8 feet tall. I don't know.
It's a giant league. I don't know.
It's the thing they had the budget to get a helicopter, but not a cool helicopter, but they still included the scene anyway. It looks like they're going to report on the traffic and weather, but they're supposed to be hunting Swamp Thing.
It's a 70s helicopter, but whatever, it flies in the air just like the rest of them. Shut your veil. Come on.
I like that the lady who's one of the bad guy minions, she kicks around. She had kicked around for years in the 80s also, because she's in Deathstalker 2 and stuff like that. And she's in Bachelor Party and
from what I think she's was kind of a centerfold type back then.
She was a Penthouse pet. Yeah, she's from Penthouse.
Oh, so even better.
Yeah, so I just had to go to my old penthouses that I have stacked up around my house and go, oh, there she is.
Is this the first movie to introduce the trope of a guy and a girl showing their scars to each other and then making out?
There's no way. There's no way. It has to be before that. There's no way. It'd be
kind of cool if this is where that started. I did enjoy that scene. It was just kind of, it's weird because it seems so tropey and uninspired, but then I remember, hey, it's 1989. Maybe this was cutting edge back then.
Maybe Richard Donner stole that scene from Lethal Weapon 3 from this.
That's what I'm thinking.
Could be.
From this. I just enjoy that there is an actual actor named Ace Mack, and he looks Ace Mask, M-A-S-K. This is this dude's name, and he does not look like what you would think someone named Ace Mask would look like.
And he has a title card in the opening credits, so you don't see it associated with a person like you do in the closing credits. And I thought maybe that's who provided the masks for the mutants out in the swamp, was some company called Ace Mask.
Well, you could see
it was a guy.
You could see the main henchman if somebody said that that dude's name is Ace Mask, you'd be like, nah, that makes about sense.
Yeah, that's about right.
But not the scientist is named.
And
What?
the funniest part is, you know that's not the name on that guy's birth certificate. He looked in the mirror and thought, that's an Ace Mask.
I'm trying to see if his real name is printed anywhere, but it's like, nope, that's my Christian name. Screw you. Ace Mask. My parents
If
were
it says
cruel.
Ace Mask on that guy's birth certificate, I want to talk to his parents.
Oh man! But he was in a whole bunch of Wynorski films, playing basically that same Dr. Rochelle role. So like he's a Wynorski regular.
Mm-hmm.
But he was super great. I love the all of the
Ace
science.
Mask's real name. You ready?
Okay, let's do it.
Wesley Mask.
You know what? His friends didn't nickname him Ace.
It's literally it was his birth name was Wesley Mask.
Yeah, he gave himself that nickname of Ace.
Of course.
You know what I look like? I look like an ace.
What if indeed he was like, this pro tennis star that nobody, like, we didn't really know his name, but because he was just this crazy tennis player in high school, they called him Ace, and then like he blew out his Achilles tendon, and instead of that summer, he decided to join the what do you call it, the local theater group or whatever, and
Yeah.
that changed his life forever. But he was still Ace Mask.
What's strange to me is Wesley seems to really suit that guy. Like
Yes.
he should have rode that Wesley train.
You'd get a lot more scientist roles with a name like Wesley than you would Ace, I would imagine, unless he was just like, I want to be in The Good, Bad, and the Ugly too, or something. Terrible.
The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly too.
Yeah, that's what Ace Mask would shoot for.
Yeah, I like that.
But isn't that the third in that trilogy, the No Name trilogy, is The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly?
Yes, none of these things that I'm saying actually make sense, so let's
I
not
see.
try to overanalyze them too awful much because they're not there.
I'm kind of shocked there wasn't a third Swamp Thing movie though, because didn't this was a failure at the box office, but didn't this just like light the video rentals up?
I don't know. Like we never had HBO growing up, but this feels like something that would play on HBO.
Also, keep in mind this is 89, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Batman came out that year.
Yeah,
Like, no one's buying Return of Swamp Thing.
And they both had the same executive producer because Michael Uzlan bought the rights for Batman and Swamp Thing at the same time, like in
Yes,
the
he
late
did.
70s.
I tell you what, that Uzlan like saw where the puck is going. He went there, boy.
He paid one price for both properties. He did not make equal money from the two.
At least you can look at Swamp Thing as like your write off and be like, all right, the other one did
It kind
fine.
of feels like when you're at a flea market or a yard sale and they've got one thing you want, one thing you have to take in order to get the thing you want. They're like, nope, they come as a pair. If you want Batman, you got to take Swamp Thing.
I love the main henchman with his like crazy goatee and the what were the Avenging Angels or whatever in New York City with their berets?
Yeah, he does have that
Guardian
look with the
Angel.
beret.
Guardian Angels,
Yeah.
that's what it is. He's got the Guardian Angel beret and like an orange jumpsuit, and he's just chewing on scenery left and right. I love that guy.
And who goes to Beirut on spring break?
Well, that's what makes it so funny. He actually has aged quite well. Like when you look at his photo on IMDb, you're like, oh, that guy aged like he did it right. He's not dyeing his hair jet black and keeping it long and pretending that he's no, I'm still 35.
You believe this, don't you? Don't you? I want to be young again.
Was Heather Locklear dating a member of Motley Crue when this movie was made?
Indeed,
'Cause
she was. That
they
was
had
yet
that Motley Crue joke dropped in there.
yet another inside joke where I like it. I like that things, and I also like because Heather Locklear is one that we forget about with him. And after a while, you're like, "Oh, Tommy Lee very much has a style of lady."
But
Oh, yeah.
I was going to say, couldn't you say that Pamela Anderson was the 90s equivalent of Heather Locklear?
Yeah, pretty
Oh,
much.
Yeah, the best way to describe Pam Anderson is she's Heather Locklear to the extreme, which is the most 90s thing in the world.
Yeah.
I liked.
Heather Locklear would have made a good barbed wire.
A better barbed wire, I'd say.
Perhaps. I liked Adam Carolla calling what's her name there, Pamela Anderson, a female impersonator. I'm like, yeah, that's pretty accurate. It's just like, this is what a lady's like. We promise, but it's just a lady.
That's funny.
So, keep that under your hat every time you see her now, and you won't not be able to think that.
The thing that gets me, though, is I watched TJ Hooker. I saw some of Heather Locklear's early work, and she actually could look sweet, like before she, I don't know, totally bleached out her hair and damaged it. Or I don't know. There's something about her here that just looks like, what the kind of girls that were in Motley Crue videos in the 80s. Like she went off track somewhere just a little bit, because she kind of had like that sweet Midwestern face to her.
That's what I got from watching this, because growing up in the 90s and everything, the place that I saw Heather Locklear the most was, of course, on all the promos for Melrose Place. And of course,
I thought you were going to say Spin City.
No, I did watch Spin City, but like more. I watched Spin City a whole lot more than Melrose Place. I'll tell you that. Melrose Place was not an 11-year-old Adam's jam. So I was just call me crazy, not crazy about the about Melrose Place.
It would have made you a vastly different person if you, at 11 years old, just fell in love with Melrose.
That would, yeah, probably. So and she was always kind of the bitchy lady on that, at least from what I saw in the promos all the time. She was just screaming at somebody all the time, and I'm just like, this lady's like mad at everything. So really, to see her in this and just that smile on her face, and you can tell. I honestly believe you can tell when someone is having a good time on set, and she's clearly loving all of this kind of stuff. And to me, that made this movie so much more endearing.
I can see that. Yeah, I'm not going to disagree with that at all, Adam.
Yeah, I agree. I think that probably everyone involved with this, with the exception of Louis Jourdan, probably just had a ball on the show. And then when Louis Jourdan would show up to set, people would be like, "Oh,
there comes the party pooper."
This guy again. But they blew up so much stuff. Like the pyrotechnics budget had to be half of the budget for this film. They blew up tons of cars and boats and a house at the end. It was just... they went, gasoline bomb amazing. It was so great.
You guys might know enough to tell this better than me. Did they really blow up a house, or is that like a miniature or model or something?
I think that it's an actual. I think it's the facade of a house.
Yeah, I don't.
That's
I don't think it was
then.
It
can't get a full-size 4-wheeler because they blew all their money on the mansion.
Yeah, it looks like it's a little. You're right. I think it's probably more of the facade type thing, but it looked pretty darn good. It does. It was one of those that you looked and it was so good that you had to kind of go, did they do that with miniatures and stuff like that? Because it really blew up. They weren't messing around over there.
I'll say if they hadn't blown up the house, they might have got a third movie.
You got to go back to that house yet again, but it's more like Texas Chainsaw or something like that.
Oh, man, you got to make a prequel for the third movie.
And Bruce, now I can't think that you weren't the biggest fan of the animal-human hybrids that they were locked in cages and stuff. We had there was an elephant man, there was a cockroach guy. I really, really love those practical effects where they try their best and they come up with stuff like what we get in this movie. Like there's this sweet spot where stuff really, really appeals to me. And these unmen are right there. I love this kind of thing.
So you keep calling them unmen. Is that from the comics?
Yeah, that's what Anton Arcane's mutants are called. And I used to get them confused with the Higher Evolutionary has something called Ani-Men, which are the same thing basically. But unmen are the DC ones, and I think the Ani-Men might be the ones from Marvel. Could be, maybe I could have that reversed too, but I'm going to stick with unmen at this point.
So I guess that the Island of Dr. Moreau stuff was just always there in Swamp Thing then.
Yeah, that was Arcane's evil shtick, from the 70s.
I see.
It always reminds me of that the scientist on South Park that just puts monkeys butts on monkeys or something like that. It's just why are you doing that? It's it's science.
Yeah,
it's just science. That's just what you do. You create these animal-human hybrids, and in the front to God and science, we just do what we do over here. Come on.
And it's also kind of nice because I think there's a greater than 30% chance that some of those practical unmen plastic masks probably got reused in some really schlocky stuff.
I would say to you, there is no doubt in my mind that happened.
Yeah. So I like knowing that it's got a life that's going on and on. And somewhere there's a collector who's proud to have like the half elephant man's face up in a room behind plexiglass.
Why does this mask smell Canadian?
Yes.
That's how you know it's got the best freshness. All right, before we get to our final review here and everything, we have to ask ourselves one very important question, is how this movie relates back 1-to-1 with Sylvester Stallone.
Why, thank you, Adam. I have a prepared statement.
Oh.
Michael Uslan is a lawyer. He's a lawyer. Mrs. Stallone, Michael Uslan is a lawyer. And he was the lawyer for Return of Swamp Thing. I know he's an entertainment lawyer, but I want to think that he was a criminal trial lawyer where he had to have a rousing opening speech, which started like this. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I have a prepared statement. He'd say, my client is a simple thing, a simple swamp thing. And yes, he caved in that toothless gentleman's chest with his bare hands, but he did it to save that smart African-American kid and that dumb fat white kid. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, who amongst us wouldn't have done the same thing if we weren't in his shoes? His swamp moccasins, if you will. Look, I know that Michael Uslan isn't a trial lawyer, Mr. Stallone, but he was the lawyer on your film, Rocky II. One of the most interesting pieces of trivia about that movie is that the character of Apollo Creed doesn't smile once in Rocky II. That surprises me because whenever I think of that character, he's always smiling. But he is not smiling. He doesn't smile a single time in Rocky II. Michael Uslan has since become a producer. In fact, you can't make anything Batman related without him. He's listed as a producer on every single Batman property since the 89 Michael Keaton Batman. I think at this point, he's just getting checks mailed to his Sky Palace. But what do I know? I'm just some dude who works at a cracker factory. And here we are again, Mr. Stallone. That's how you're connected to this bizarre sequel to a bizarre character. I hope to hear from you soon. This is the 361st time we've tried this bit. I'll do better next week. Thank you. Your new best friend, Sweet Shawnzy from the internet.
Stallone, we're always available at hearmoviepodcast@gmail.com. If you're listening, we just, reach out.
Well, not always, but
Well,
have your people call us directly because we don't have people.
yeah, exactly. It'll just be us.
Have your people hire some people for us.
Yeah, hire some people for us. Have your people call those people, and those people will email us. Or we could get to the Robin rating for this. Now, if you're not aware of our Robin rating, head on over to our subreddit, reddit.com/r/hearmoviepodcast. It's right there at the top of the screen. Bruce, where does The Return of Swamp Thing from 1989 fall in the Robin rating system for you?
Well, it immediately has a floor. It can't go below Damian Wayne just based on the performance of the red-haired kid alone. So it's going to be at least Damian Wayne. And then I look at the other aspects of it. And I got to say, looking at this is directed by the same guy that directed House on Hooter Hill, and it's starring Heather Locklear. I'm glad that they didn't try to make it sort of a little more salacious R kind of stuff than what they did. So that most of that credit probably goes to Ms. Locklear for not wanting her career to go that direction. But still, I like it that they're trying to make a fun, sort of campy, pulpy superhero. Well, not really superhero, but horror comic adaptation. It delivers exactly what you're going to expect. I mean, it's not going to disappoint you unless you are a really weird person who gets Return of the Swamp Thing and is expecting something more than what you get. So I think it's a solid Damian Wayne. I mean, if you're the kind of person who likes Return of the Swamp Thing, you're going to like this. This is the best version of this movie I think that could have been made.
If you like Harry Met Sally, you'll love Swamp Thing.
Return of the Swamp Thing.
Return of the Swamp Thing, even more
It's
so.
Return of Swamp Thing. There's no definitive article.
Oh,
Yeah,
my goodness.
But based on my somewhat vague memories of the original Swamp Thing, I think this is the superior of the two.
I agree. I much prefer this version over the original Swamp Thing movie, mainly because they had the cards they were dealt. Instead of being a bunch of sucky babies and being like, we're still going to make the movie we wanted to make. They were like, hey, we got to pivot here. And so they did, and they did the best that they possibly could with what they had available. Because my guess is that they had very little money to make this movie, and it was still really fun.
And you can pick up just fine on this movie. You don't have to see the first one first.
No, well, geez, I mean, it's in the title, Swamp Thing. Okay, we got it. Nailed it.
Now this is just him coming back because it's Return of Swamp Thing. Hello.
Return of Swamp Thing. So, I like this movie. This isn't something that I'm going to revisit. I think that it's a Damian Wayne for me. That is not to say that this is a bad movie. I don't think it is. But there are certain aspects to this movie where they're treading water, and that's fine. That's the kind of movie it is. So for me, Damian Wayne.
Yeah, you can kind of see the seams in a lot of stuff, and it's not the $4 million is what the actual budget of this thing was. So like decent, but nothing too awful, wild, and crazy, especially for 1989 money. And it delivers in everything that you kind of want it to be. Like you said, if you listen to that trailer and you're like, oh, that kind of sounds fun and stupid, that's exactly what this movie will be. A nice little fun and stupid jaunt. I think this would do well as a group movie. Just a lot of people watching it because there's some just really dumb stuff that happens in it that you'd do well by having more people to laugh with you at all of these silly goings on that happen in this movie, and Lord knows there are plenty of them. But Heather Locklear's having a good time. Swamp Thing looks as good as he could look in one of these movies. I'm going Tim Drake on this one. I enjoyed it quite a bit, and like I said, I think I'm with Sean. I don't know how often I'll revisit this thing, but for what it is, it's been available on Amazon for flipping ever. So my guess is it's not going away anytime soon. So you could find a lot worse ways to fill up your day and everything. So
I got to tell you, I was surprised by that it was on Amazon, because when we figured out this is what we were going to be reviewing this week, I, of course, immediately went to HBO Max because it's Warner Brothers and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. But no, it's on Amazon Prime.
Been there forever. That Ooze Line and Amazon Prime, they're in bed together. I didn't want to have to say it out loud, but it's kind of an unspoken thing. Speaking of unspoken, Bruce, where can we find more of your work on the internet this week?
Hey, I'd love for people to check out my YouTube channel, youtube.com/c/Bruce Leslie. Lots of anime talk, wrapping up, discussing the first season of Jujutsu Kaisen here in the next week or two, making my way through Attack on Titan, and just peppering in other little things here and there that catch my fancy.
Sean, has things caught your fancy lately?
Yes, they have. And you can find them over at Loki 30 Questions, where each week we review the newest episode of Loki in the format of a 30 questions show. So show up for that.
Lots of good stuff, a lot of listener questions and all that kind of good stuff. So we appreciate it. A lot of people listen to this show, listen to that show, and vice versa. We appreciate all of that. And that will do it. Now, last week, our buddy and supporter over at patreon.com/HMP, Jim, the Quiet Filipino Gentleman, he wrote in last week and asked us that we should check out a series on Netflix that has a lot of Filipino folklore and mythos and stuff. It looked cool to us, so I think next week we're going to talk the first 3 episodes of Trece. That's available now on Netflix. And Bruce, I got to ask you, are you tired of the anime yet?
No, not at all.
Is Anime Dad like? You haven't hit a wall yet, so that's good.
Oh no, not at all. Because I've hit many more walls with HMP so far.
Listen, he's like, I go where the viewers go, doggone it. So
yeah,
they say what's over there. That's what I do.
Yeah, kind of interested in Trece myself, given the wife's heritage and my kids and everything. So I think we'll have fun with that here at the Leslie household.
Very cool.
So we'll discuss all of that next week. That'll do it for this episode. Join us next week when we're talking about the first 3 episodes of Trece on Netflix for Sweet Sean's the Kovacs from the internet. Bruce Leslie. I'm Adam Portress. Stay super, everybody.
Bye, Marty and Evie.